So, Dharmesh, do Manchester United have to get rid of these players before they can bring new players in?
I mean, it's going to help. At the moment, they've brought in Matheus Cunha and Bryan Mbeumo. Cunha was done really early in the window. Then the focus was purely on Bryan Mbeumo, regardless of any other players that they were interested in. The focus now, I have to reiterate from Manchester United's perspective, is player sales. They want to generate some money so that they maybe can go again in this transfer market. But we have been saying throughout this window that they are in the market for a striker. They are in the market for a number 9, and that's regardless of what happens with Rasmus Højlund, because there has been a bit of talk about Italian clubs interested in Rasmus Højlund. But whether he stays or goes, I think Manchester United would want to strengthen in that position. We've been told that initial talks have taken place with Aston Villa over Ollie Watkins, but that's been met with a not for sale from Aston Villa. But could Alejandro Garnacho be key in any possible deal for Ollie Watkins? Because Aston Villa are interested in Alejandro Garnacho as well. They've also explored the conditions of a deal, not only for Ollie Watkins, but for Victor Gyökeres, who we'll come to later, who's going somewhere else. We clearly know about that. Nicholas Jackson from Chelsea, and RB Leipzig's Benjamin Sesko, who we seem to be talking about nearly every single transfer window. But at this moment in time, all of these players seem to be a little bit too expensive for Manchester United to do. And on the flip side as well, if any of these clubs want to sell these strikers, then Manchester United can do what other clubs will probably try and do to them with regard to those 5 players, and maybe wait until later in the window to maybe get a better price. But maybe the Villa one, with if the interest in Garnacho is pursued, then maybe that can hold the key to maybe a deal for somebody like Ollie Watkins. With regard to Sesko, the interesting one here is that the recruitment director at Manchester United is a gentleman called Christopher Vivell, and he's the one driving the interest in Sesko, because when Sesko was 16, Vivell was the sporting director at Red Bull Salzburg, and he brought him in to that club. Hence, there is that long-running interest. But if you look at what United have done so far in this window, I mentioned Cunha and I mentioned Mbeumo. What they do have in common is that they've got Premier League experience. Now, I just wonder whether Manchester United have looked back in the last few transfer windows and thought, when we've gone abroad for the likes of Højlund, Xerxes, Antony, hasn't worked. We maybe need players who hit the ground running straight away. So hence why they've got these 2 players in their mid-20s, arguably at their peak of their powers, and who have performed really, really well in this league already. Well, I mean, look, if you take it on face value, first of all, Manchester United have still got these 3 players in their squad. They don't want those 3 players in their squad. We should add Tyrell Malacia to that one as well, because there were 5 originally. Of course, Marcus Rashford has gone to Barcelona. Yeah, we take it on face value, and we believe everything Ruben Amorim is saying. If they remain at Manchester United, yes, they'll be reintegrated. They'll fight for their place in the team, which is perfect for me. The other way to look at it is they're just trying to protect their negotiating position. But you wonder whether that ship has sailed now because of what's happened in the past month or so, because it's been made clear that Manchester United don't want these players. And if you're a club who want to buy these players, as much as Manchester United will say, well, if you don't meet our asking price, they're not going anywhere, clubs will say, well, we do know you want to sell them, so let's just wait until that price comes down. But it's clear why Manchester United will want to do this, because they want to maintain a good bargaining position that they found themselves in with this. But if you go back to, I think it would have been when Erik ten Hag was in charge, and he had effectively exonerated Jadon Sancho from the squad completely. He was not part of the squad, and he didn't get that move at the end of that transfer window. Come the summer, there were those pictures on Manchester United's website of Jadon Sancho and Erik ten Hag together on the training ground. People say, oh, is this a reunion? Have they kissed and made up? Is there a future for Jadon Sancho? People were like, no, there isn't. That was just literally just to say, Jadon Sancho's still part of this squad, and if anyone wants to buy him, well, look, we're happy to keep him, but you're going to have to pay good money. So I think that might be what we're seeing with these players as well. Maybe there hasn't been the falling out that Erik ten Hag had with Jadon Sancho, but it is clear that Ruben Amorim wants to start making the squad Ruben Amorim squad, and these players don't fit.
And I think alongside that and alongside his comments saying he'll welcome back the players, they are Manchester United players after all, and he wants them to integrate into the side. Well, if that actually comes to fruition at the end of the transfer window and no clubs reach their asking price for those players and they are integrated back, how tough is that going to be to integrate those players back? Because bear in mind, they're not part of pre-season for Manchester United. They're not on the tour. They're not with the new players, the new sign-ins. They're not part of Amorim's new ideas for this season. So that's going to take a long time to do it. So I guess my question to Ruben Amorim, if that is the case, you are happy to welcome these players back, why are you not welcoming these players onto the pre-season tour now to make sure that you're integrating them just in case they do end up staying?
Well, what about... Go on, Damesh.
Well, one thing I'd say as well... There's a comparison, a slight comparison to be drawn here with Arsenal. When Mikel Arteta took over, Arsenal were in a bit of a mess. And at one point during his reign, he basically, and the hierarchy said, we need to move on now. Now, Arsenal took a hit with some of their finances when they allowed Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. They mutually terminated his contract. There are a few other players where they just said, you're not part of these plans anymore. I think there's been 10 or 11 years since Sir Alex Ferguson left where Manchester United have tried everything with various managers, but without a structure in place. Now they have the structure in place. Now they have put their faith in Ruben Amorim. Maybe part of them is thinking, yes, we need the public face to be, well, we'll reintegrate them. But privately, they're probably thinking, at some point, we have to move on and start the new Manchester United under Ruben Amorim. And if these players don't fit, will they take a hit? They probably will. They're not going to get anywhere close to £73 million for Jadon Sancho. They're definitely not going to get anywhere close to the 80-odd million they spent on Antony. So they're going to make a loss. But for the good of the long-term future of Manchester United, that's probably where they're at now.
OK, so where they're at now, says Damesh. How close are they to getting rid of any of these players?
Not very. Right now is the true fact and true statement with it. Let's talk about Antony, though. Antony, there are more offers, more interest, it feels like, for him than there are for the likes of Jadon Sancho, Alejandro Garnacho, Tyrell Malacia at this stage. Now, Antony, we understand there are 2 Saudi Arabian Premier League clubs who are showing interest. Now, Real Betis, we know, are keen for him to come back. He had a very successful loan spell at the back end of last season, showed everybody actually what sort of player he can be, despite the huge £86 million price tag, which I think clearly weighs on his shoulders. It's not necessarily the player's fault. That's just how deals work. But for Real Betis, a permanent transfer and a permanent transfer fee is not doable for them. They want the player on loan. Manchester United want to sell the player. So options with the likes of Saudi Premier League club are a good thing for Manchester United. Atletico Madrid, also another club monitoring the situation. Bayer Leverkusen, Bayern Munich, also keeping their eyes on that player. Now, Antony obviously knows Bayer Leverkusen, new boss, Erik ten Hag, from his time at Ajax. So, and Manchester United, of course, he says himself they're not necessarily looking at him right now. But then that also goes back to what Ruben Amorim was saying about clubs looking towards the end of the window.
So basically, these clubs are playing a massive game of chicken, aren't they? They're just, to go down to the...
But why wouldn't they?
Yeah,
exactly. When you have got a club who, as Dartmouth says, they clearly want to sell these players, well, let's wait right to the last minute when you're at your most desperate stage, and then we'll get a better price for them.
That, for Alexander Isak, Man United are not part of the conversations. Man United want to sign a top striker, but Isak is too expensive, so Man United are not working on this deal. And also, then guys, on Manchester United, I told you, no Alexander Isak because he's too expensive, but Man United in the recent hours had a direct contact with Aston Villa. So there was a club-to-club conversation. Man United asked about the situation of Ollie Watkins. The answer from Aston Villa is that they want to keep the player, so Aston Villa don't want to negotiate. It has to be a very good proposal to change the story. But Aston Villa, as of today, insists on their intention to keep Ollie Watkins and not to negotiate. So let's see if Man United will decide to go big for him and try to tempt Aston Villa and to tempt the player, or if Man United will move on different targets. But only Watkins remains one of the names on the list, and Man United made contact for Aston Villa to be informed on the situation. And then Man United also asked to Aston Villa the opportunity to sign Emi Martinez and Dibu as a goalkeeper on loan deal. Aston Villa said no chance. So Aston Villa have no intention to let Emi Martinez go on loan. That was very clear after the meeting. It's also important to say that Man United still have to decide whether they want to go for an experienced goalkeeper like Dibu Martinez, also with Dibu being very keen on a move to Man United, as I told you, or if they want to go for a young goalkeeper. And in that case, Lammens from Royal Antwerp remains the name. A player really appreciated by Man United, scouted for a long time, with the player also keen on a move. So that remains the way. Young goalkeeper, old goalkeeper, experienced, because old is not a nice word for one of the best in the world, if not the best, like Dibu Martinez. So for sure, Manchester United are working on the goalkeeper. And remember the priorities. This meeting with Aston Villa is confirming to us the two priorities: the striker and the goalkeeper. At the moment, no green light on loan for Emi Martinez, no green light for Oli Watkins, with Villa intention to keep him, but to show how Man United are working on these two possibilities, on these two positions.
So, here's what's going on at Manchester United right now. Ruben Amorim is already shaking things up, especially in attack. Word is, he's quietly looking for someone who can really lead the line next season. And let's be honest, Højlund had a rough time last season. 2 goals in the league? That's not going to cut it for a club like United. I like the lad's effort, don't get me wrong, but Amorim wants more cutting edge. Hugo Ekitike has come up again as a possible option, and apparently Jean-Philippe Mateta and even Osimhen are names being watched. If United land a proper 9, it could completely change their season. Now, what I respect about Amorim is how straight up he's been. When asked about players who might want to leave, he basically said, if you don't want to be here, fine, we'll find a solution. But he also made it clear that if you are here, you fight for your place like everyone else. That's the kind of no-nonsense attitude United have been missing. For too long, players have coasted around the squad with no accountability. Amorim isn't having any of that. Honestly, it feels like a bit of a reset at Old Trafford, and I think it's about time. Amorim is trying to build a group that actually wants to fight for the badge, not just collect wages. Whether Højlund finds his form or gets replaced, we're likely to see a more competitive, fired-up team next season, and I'm here for it.